All right, guys. So today I want to talk a little bit about Vineyard Wind. But before I get into this, I need to provide you with some context as to why I haven't discussed this yet. Another one I also haven't discussed is South Shore Wind. And I'm just going to be honest with you here, and I'm also going to try to be as fair as I can. But this isn't just about like exploding turbines, okay? I'm going to cover that too. But this is about, we have a huge problem, okay? And I think this is one of the biggest scams that we have been sold on. And that is luxury beliefs. I've talked about this once before, but these are kind of like these virtuous sounding ideas that when people are together, they love to talk about. And I feel like it's very short-sighted. They like to post about these things on Instagram. They bring them into conversations because they're very, very progressive. They're very eco-friendly. And conveniently, they don't cost people anything until, of course, it ends up in your backyard. So that's the way that it goes. And again, I'm going to try to be fair here, and I'll give credit where credit is due. I can't even tell you the amount of text messages, emails, and phone calls in regards to this. And I told everybody, and if you're watching, you know what I'm going to say, the same exact thing. You know, it boils down to this. These people, you guys were sold a package of goods where you thought, at least I think that you thought that you were buying into this like affordable wind power, but it ended up being an unaffordable wind problem. Okay, that's what it is. Even Don Holdgate, who is the chair of the select board, she openly regretted signing that 2020 deal. And she even said she would never touch it knowing what she knows today. Okay, take it from there. These are everyday people, citizens, taxpayers, and even some former, wind supporters who basically, they've had enough, okay? They're ready to throw in the towel. And to be fair, it's honestly, to me, refreshing to see real people ditching the hype and fighting for levels of accountability after years of these like glossy promises. So let's start here. Let me rewind for a few minutes here, okay? Because none of this blew up overnight, okay? This is an ongoing saga. So Vineyard Wind launched as Biden's flashy green energy showpiece in 2021, but now it's looking more like a boondoggle, okay? They ended up fast-tracking this to meet some levels of a ambitious goal of 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. This was supposed to be one of America's first big offshore wind farms. There was going to be 62 massive GE Vernova turbines that are like 850 plus feet tall, 14 miles off of Martha's Vineyard. And they were supposed to be pumping out enough energy to basically provide enough energy for like 400 homes or something, right? And they also promised, thousands of jobs, slash emissions, all of the things, right? You get it. But this wasn't this was not a success. Okay, let's call it what it is. This was forced through by federal shortcuts and bypassed local objections because of Biden's haste, I think, to score some kind of political climate points. Something was going on here. So in turn, it seems to me like there were many, many corners that were cut here. Then in July of 2024, that's when the huge turbine blade exploded mid-spin and ended up dumping fiberglass foam. And I was reading some kind of like toxic resin, I don't know exactly what the resin is, into Nantucket's waters. So in turn, the beaches got closed, right? And they got closed during peak season. You guys might know about this already. And of course, when you do that, everything suffered, right? Everything suffered because of this. And Vineyard Wind, they waited like 2 full days before they notified any local officials. And what's even more ridiculous is that more debris showed up just 5 days later. Then GE Vernova, they ended up blaming it on a Canadian manufacturer. Okay, that was a factory that I think built these blades. And they didn't take accountability on their own. So they were forced to like eventually remove these affected blades. Then what happened is federal inspectors came out and they paused everything. Biden's team partially lifted those pauses, but the full operations didn't resume or weren't supposed to resume until Trump took over in January of 2025. But of course, it does not stop here because the local residents, they were completely frustrated with what was going on here. There were safety concerns, which I would honestly be concerned as well. And I was also reading, there was this like, and you'll probably know what I'm talking about here. I'm not down that way often. I guess there was this like blinking red light, and I guess Vineyard Wind promised that they would do something about it, and they never did. And it's still ongoing, by the way. So this whole entire situation did massive PR damage, and businesses ended up hemorrhaging money because I guess you could say local ecosystems, they began to suffer. Everybody in the community began to suffer because of this. And then the lawsuits, they started to roll in. Now, fast forward to July of 25, and GE Vernova, they settled for around, I believe, $10.5 million. But I don't think that's enough, to be honest with you. Because while they did settle, Vineyard Wind was deliberately left out of that settlement, which I think is quite ironic. And here's why. It's because the company that built the blade they're the ones taking on all of the responsibility, at least on paper, while the company that's supposed to be managing the entire operations of this project is absolutely nowhere to be found. Even according to Nantucket officials, Vineyard Wind has been missing in action since Trump won the election. And the select board even said they've gone into hiding. Like, where are they? And they're not showing up at meetings, I was reading. They're not responding to community demands, and they're not offering any direct restitution or resolutions to these issues, right? You have to have clear lines of communication between the community and between these big mega businesses, right? Now, if you're curious why the Trump administration froze this new offshore wind leasing, it wasn't just to throw darts at like Biden's climate scoreboard or something here. They ended up hitting pause to actually do, at least I think, some due diligence, right? And dig deeper into what the Biden administration rushed through, which was the real environmental impact on wildlife, on the coastal communities, and, oh yeah, taxpayers who are footing the bill for this damn thing. We're talking about deeper reviews on things like whale migration patterns, the fishing industry disruption, and whether or not these mega projects actually deliver on their promises or just burn billions while simultaneously wrecking ecosystems. And let's be real here, tourism as well, okay? This is a huge issue for tourism. People are not going to travel to somewhere where beaches are getting shut down because of environmental issues. Let's just cut to the chase, okay? So in other words, in my opinion, this is not a political stunt. Some people may think it is. It's not a political stunt. I think it's a reality check. And that may not be something you want to hear, because maybe, just maybe, before greenlighting the next 100 turbines, we should figure out the first batch if it's even working. I think that would be somewhat common sense. And by the way, Nantucket, they're not messing around with this, okay? They are demanding 15 immediate fixes, including instant safety alerts, a $10 million cleanup escrow, a $25,000 per turbine penalty until the lighting issue is resolved. I don't know how this is not resolved yet, by the way. I feel like this is an easy thing to resolve. And also there was fines of up to 250 grand each time Vineyard Wind blows up their communication. I would say that they are sending a blunt message to Vineyard Wind's foreign ownership that, the slogan here is that corporate responsibility isn't just a slogan, okay? That's what it is. This brings me, let's talk about this one more time. This brings me right back to the whole luxury belief principle or framework. These people who voted for Biden, for Harris, and probably for Healy, because yes, clean energy on paper sounds fantastic as long as the wind turbines aren't ending up in your backyard. But now that these blades are a problem, they're killing tourism, they're hurting the beaches, they're spiking costs, suddenly those virtuous beliefs come at a real cost. And now you are seeing the effects of that. Businesses suffered, ecosystems were damaged, whales and marine life are washing up on shore. And I think the jury could still be out on whether or not the marine life's deaths are, let's say, related to this at all. I think that it's undeniable that the risks are real. And, I've personally grilled many politicians on this, asking them to show me some hard data, some hard metrics on this, whether or not this whole green dream is going to effectively be a net positive for the taxpayers, okay? And there's no accountability. And of course, I always come up empty-handed. So here's the way it goes. Massachusetts, they love big promises. They have ballooning budgets. They have hidden fees. And more importantly, they have ideology or provide ideology over information, okay? That's what the problem here is. The priority is on the ideology. It is not in the information. And Healy's aggressive, they're very aggressive. Her green mandates echo Vineyard Wind's rushed failures. I think there's a lot of overpromising here, and I think there's a lot of undelivering here. And essentially, who's going to be holding the bag is the taxpayers. So why should the taxpayers here pour like billions of dollars in unproven, rushed messes when the first ones are already unraveling as we are talking here? I mean, really, it's absolutely ridiculous that we shouldn't have to demand real accountability. That should be delivered as a given here, okay? But instead, these people, they provide no transparency. There's no data-backed decisions. And this kind of problem, this isn't only going to be a Nantucket or a South Shore wind problem. It's going to be all of our problems. And we're witnessing it. We're witnessing it now, okay? We're witnessing it now. And it's only going to get worse. And it's only going to get less cost-effective to live here, period. End of story. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.